All righty. So before we do enter the exhibition, I welcome you all to Temple University, Rome, and to the Gallery of Art opening, Torn, Layered, and in Decay, Accident and Intent in the Found Art Photos of William Graebner. This event is presented on Kunstmatrix, the virtual 3D exhibition platform that we've been using since March, when we brought the Gallery of Art online and successfully completed our spring and summer exhibition schedule. And now that we are slowly resuming in-person programming, we are, however, continuing to explore the many opportunities that this virtual exhibition format allows. We can reach a larger audience, and we can share our shows with students and visitors in the US and elsewhere. And we can feature artists that were impossible to invite because of various considerations of distance and cost and so on. Bill is in Buffalo, and we're here in Rome, for example. All this only seems easy, but in fact reflects the hard work of the Gallery of Art team, Barbara Kahn and Emily Kravitz, whom I thank always, and of our new dean, Emilia Zanchina, whose creative vision guided us in this process even before her arrival in Rome in June. But an exhibition, however it's presented, is compelling art and an engaging artist. We are so happy that with this technology, we can enjoy the art and the artist in conversation this evening. So if you're joining us on the European time, open a bottle of chilled white wine, and if you're stateside, pour a warm cup of tea as I introduce William Graebner. Bill is Professor Emeritus of History at the State University of New York at Fredonia and a widely published author of books and articles on American history. And Bill is a committed and curious traveler from his home in Buffalo to Los Angeles to London, and of course to his preferred destination, Rome. Together with his wife, Diane Bennett, yearly 2-month stays in Rome have allowed Bill to explore the city on foot and with the motorino, preferring the outskirts and other Rome, looking for archaeological sites that most archaeologists wouldn't consider sites, abandoned or repurposed industrial architecture, public housing, areas of street art. These walks are documented by hundreds of photographs and resulted in the publication in 2009 of the book Rome the Second Time, a compilation of 15 contemporary itineraries, and of the eponymous blog. With the first solo exhibition in Buffalo in November 2019, Bill has been engaged with photography for many years, and his interest in found art began with torn posters in Bologna in 1989, and in his own words, today is focused on the layered, accidental, collaborative, and usually unintended imagery to be found on the complex walls of Rome and other cities. So now I welcome the visitors to enter into the exhibition in just a moment, which will be illustrated to us by Bill. Following the visit, we will allow for question and answer through the chat. So please type in your questions, and these will be monitored and presented to Bill by my colleague, Barbara. So now I welcome you all, and please join us with Bill.
So I want to welcome all of you. Thank you for showing up for the opening. I think it's wonderful. It's an exciting moment for me, and I know that because I'm actually wearing a collared shirt. I want to thank, of course, Shara Wasserman, who came up with this idea and pursued it. Barbara Kahn and Emily Kravitz for their hard work. All three of you have been great to work with. This hasn't been the easiest thing to assemble. And of course, I want to thank Temple University, Rome, and the gallery, one of our favorite spaces in Rome, for making this possible as well. I had thought that I would start by explaining what found art was, and I decided that wasn't a good idea, partly because, you know, after you've seen some of the photographs, you'll have a good idea, at least of my notion of found art, or accidental art, as I think it's perhaps more often called. Instead of, I will say, I don't photograph, at least not professionally, if you know what I mean. I don't photograph graffiti because that's somebody else's stuff. And I also don't do nature. Some people who are into this field photograph tree trunks and stones and things like that, beautiful as they are. I just don't, it isn't what I do. I'm much more involved with the built environment in cities. I'd like to start with just a notion of how difficult it can be, I think, to see this stuff, to find it. And after all, it's found art, it has to be found. You have to see it. And it it's difficult because while it's ubiquitous, it's not always apparent, especially in a city like Rome that's so rich and powerful and spectacular, even in so many ways. It can be difficult to focus on something as seemingly minor as this. So I'm going to start with just a couple of examples, a few examples of finding it. Let's see, Emily, if you could focus on number 2. This is a colorful piece. As you can see, it's got some rust. It's got some a black slash at the bottom, some white tape of some kind, some peeling paint. I really like the image. And now to the second, number 3, if you will, Emily. You can sort of see that now. This is where I found it. I went back 2 years later and it was actually still there, but it's on the upper left of this wall, this gate to a housing project in Rome. I hope you can sort of see that. So you have to imagine me walking by this thing and saying, okay, bam, I'll take that photograph of that part of this gate. Now the next, if we could go to number 4, this is a wall in Rome, on Via Casilina Vecchia, actually, to be precise. And I found this, no, not there, no, not to the left, please, or on number 4, yeah. This was originally decorated by a well-known muralist in Rome, Alice, or Alice. And then some graffiti people came along and covered up some of Alice's work. But what I was interested in was the lower left part of this wall, which I saw, and I had to clear away a bunch of this brush, which was much lower before I did that. And I'll show you 3 pictures I took on that lower left section. So here's one, the number 5. This is called Crossing Blues. And that came right off of this wall. Number 6, I call this Cascade, also came off the wall. It's actually my business card, although I turned it on its side to make it fit. And the next, number 7, I call this Fences for lack of any other title, but so those 3 photographs and a number of others that are, I think, equally stunning came off of that little space where I think people had sort of been doing various things, but not intending it as art. Now I want to pick up the issue of intentionality very precisely. And if you could move on to number 9. This I found on the wall of an entrance to a youth center in Tivoli. And it's so busy, it looks like a bunch of people have been working on this. It's possible that only one person did it, but I doubt it. I think it's some kind of a cumulative mishmash, but I was very taken with it. And it seemed to me to lack the intent of a single person. Number 10, please. Emily, thank you. I'm going to be dealing in the next few photographs with the subject of rust, because rust is almost by definition lacking in conscious intent, because it's, after all, simply the working of chemicals and water on iron. But this is from a trestle in Buffalo. And I want to insist on this question of intent in another way that I think is important and perhaps somewhat difficult. One of the problems with intent, if people intend something, is it involves consciousness. And one could look at consciousness as positive or negative. I'm going to look at it quite negatively here as a kind of straitjacket. And I'll explain why I think that's true. If I were to show you right now, I should probably have this, but if I were to show you a painting by Modigliani, you would say, oh, yes, that's a painting by Modigliani. And because you know what Modigliani does, and he more or less did the same thing over and over again. He's got a style and a way of painting and a way of expressing himself that emerges from his consciousness and affects all his work, or most of it. I'm not a Modigliani expert. I could give other examples as well. But what found art does is free us from this consciousness, this burden, the fact that everything we do looks the same. One way to look at this is, I would guess that if I were to show, after you've seen the show, if I were to show you some more work, you wouldn't be able to say, well, this is a William Graebner. You wouldn't know. And it's not because I don't have consciousness of some kind. It's because what I'm photographing and what I'm dealing with lacks intent. And anyway, this is a complex issue, but we can talk about it later. If we move to the next wall, please. This is, oh, sorry, I have that. And number 12, it's Sublime. This is another rust photograph, not the greatest one, but it's about rust. And of course, in this case, it's intentional. I mean, there's some intentional, somebody wrote Sublime there with intent, and I photographed it. So there is intent with some kinds of rust-based photographs. There's another point to be made here, which is, you can see it doesn't really spell sublime, it spells sublime. Now, there was an E, and I didn't photograph the E, and there's a reason for that. And I'll tell just a brief story that was very important to me. Decades ago, when I was a student at Stanford in Florence, my art professor, Matt Kahn, was also into photography, and I'd taken a lot of photographs of downtown Florence, black and whites, and was eager to show them to him. He took the packet in his hand and began looking through. When we got to one, I felt embarrassed because it was a Moda sign. Moda is a brand of, I guess, of chocolates or something. I don't quite recall. But I had failed to include the whole sign. And I was ready to apologize when he said, I really like this one. Yeah, so sometimes, never show the whole thing. Sometimes I follow that, because then it makes it participatory. You read Sublime and you know it's sublime, and so you read Sublime and there you are. You're in some way participating in the experience. One more point about rust. Buffalo, when COVID hit, I couldn't go to Rome, still can't. And I thought, well, how am I going to get any pictures? I'm going to get any photographs? Because that was really my bedrock, the bedrock of my photography. And I was saddled with buffalo. And strikingly, we take long walks every day in various places around Buffalo that nobody else ever gets to, or hardly anyone. And it's a remarkable city for a different kind of found art, which involves industry and of course, rust-based photography and things like that. So it's been a real surprise. Rome, on the other hand, is not a rust city. There's hardly any rust in Rome, maybe a little bit here and there, but not much. But it has, of course, other qualities. It's a graffiti and tagging city and a poster city. That's in really important ways. So we go to number 14, please. The automobile, right. So we were walking down the street in Buffalo, Diane and I, and saw this car, and I was ready to walk by, and Diane said, well, don't you want to photograph that? I thought, okay, maybe I do, So I took some photographs, and so it's a kind of Diane story. And below, if you go straight down to number 13, this is what resulted, and it's actually the basis, of course, for the invitation to this exhibit. one of the reasons I was reluctant to photograph the car, basically, also because it was round surfaces, and they're difficult to get a good focus on. So if we could, let's see, move to the next wall, which is 15, 16, and 17, and over to 15. I'm still dealing with intent here. This looks to me to be obviously intentional. Somebody, how do you get a circle without intent, after all, right? And these blue lines and so forth, I called it landing zone because of the circle. But if we move to the next photograph, this is where I found it. And it's actually a concrete pad designed to teach young people art. So it's a working surface rather than where I found this. And that means to me that first picture I showed you, landing zone, is probably entirely without intent. It's just an accident that comes from people working, kids working on this surface and doing various things with it. So on the next piece, this I call this a la Pollock because it's got some of Pollock's, Jackson Pollock's exuberance and the sense of kind of throwing paint. It comes from the same surface as the other piece, as it comes from that slab. And if you recall, I mean, I think one of the theories of Pollock, and I think it's probably true, is that he engaged in, he did his drip paintings with the idea of stripping himself of consciousness and touching his unconscious mind. He wanted to get, rid of that consciousness. And I think this photograph does something similar in a found art way to what Pollock was trying to do. So we'll go to the final wall in the room, in the first room. These are all posters. I used to work more extensively in posters, and there are 4 of them here that I've always liked. And we'll take a look at a couple. As Shara said, my interest in posters began in Bologna in 1989, and it was my first contact really with the poster city, where they're just everywhere. And I was interested in how they were torn and weathered and the kinds of images that then emerged from these processes. Let's take a look at number 20, which is Marilyn. What's that?
Okay, let me cut this.
This is it's hard to describe. People like this picture. I like it too, but I don't quite know why. I suppose it's because it takes Marilyn out of some aura of perfection in which we usually see her. Here this is a very weathered poster, all kinds of flecks and things in it. And she's surrounded here by words that, I don't know, rumba or something, and some other stuff that is not, doesn't seem to have much to do with her. So it changes her and our perception of her in some way. And to the right of this, number 22, thanks, Emily. You are running this, aren't you, Emily?
Yeah,
Anyway,
I am.
You're doing great. This is both of these are from about a decade ago. The last one was 2011, I think. This is 2012. Both of these were taken in Rome, and this one is from Aire. It's a suburb of Rome, as a lot of you know, and it features a boy and some kind of military-looking figure, and I call it observers. It's almost nothing without the 2 figures. You have to have them both. And it was based on posters that were put on a corrugated metal board. Okay, well, we're done with this room, which we're done with, and we're going into room 2. And I'm going to pick up we have to march in there. And to the left?
There were 2 other pictures up the two that we just saw. I don't know if you would like to comment these before we go into the other room.
No,
No, okay.
no, not important. This this is about evanescence, which is a quality of found art that is, it isn't always evanescent. Remember, I came back 2 years later to find that green thing. It was still there. But by and large, it is evanescent, especially with posters, because of course they're inevitably replaced with another poster covered up by something else. And weather has a big impact on found art too. And finally, government intervention, which I'll explain in a moment. But this first piece on the left, we could focus in on that. This is a partial of a mural to Kobe Bryant, the great professional basketball player, and his daughter, who were killed in a helicopter crash with some other people in January of this year. And this is from Los Angeles, and Los Angeles was full of posters, murals dedicated to Bryant and his daughter. And this is one of them. And most of them, of course, are not found art because they're murals. But in this case, there'd been so much participation by people. As you can see, these writings, people writing things to Kobe and to his daughter, that it became something that I could legitimately consider found art or accidental art. I took a bunch of pictures, and then if we go to the next, number 28, this is the same wall 3 months later. My son, I was no longer in Los Angeles, but my son saw it and took this picture for me. As you can see, it's about COVID now. There's just a little bit of the Bryant mural to the left, but the wall is gone. Finally, on the third picture, this is a wholly different concept. One of the reasons that found art is evanescent or ephemeral is because the governments increasingly are going at it. That is, LA has a crew that goes around and paints over everything, almost everything, on a regular basis. I'm surprised at how efficient they are. It's kind of ruined my, what I can do in LA. And that's true of businesses too. In this case, this is a picture, a photograph of a rather large window in a Buffalo warehouse. And I suspect that the owner didn't like what the graffiti writers were doing, the taggers. And so at various stages, covered it up, painted it over with different kinds of paints at different times. So, and to me, this comes close to being found art. That is found art created by people covering things up. It's called cover up. So I think we can move to the next wall. This is right, that's the one, yeah. And these are all, my recent work has been almost entirely abstract. That's been a real interest as opposed to representational. And these are examples that of the way in which weather and aging affect surfaces in an interesting way. And I'll show you two of them. On the one on the two on the right, 33 first, and then 32. This I call virus, and I named it that long before we had COVID. It's from Rome. It's from the Bioparco, the Buffalo Zoo. Some kind of sign, if I recall, that had been there forever and had cracked and aged and just no longer resembled anything except something that I thought was interesting and beautiful and deserved to be photographed. So these wonderful cracks and colors too. Now, if we could move to the below to number 32, this is a more recent example. I took this in Buffalo, I don't know, a couple of months ago. It's simply peeling paint of different colors and different eras or times, and then this whiteness on the edge, which I think really makes the picture for some reason that I can't explain. But it shows you the kind of interesting materiality that found art can produce, that sense that of depth, you could touch the different surfaces. Okay. So we'll move on to the big wall at the end of the second room. We've got 3 walls left. And I'm not going to deal with all of these. I'm going to start I'm going to go here and there, but let's go to the left to number 34. This is I call it garbage truck because the original photo was of a garbage truck that had been decorated by graffiti writers. You note that you can't tell that there's a garbage truck here, and that's part of the way in which I work is I don't like to show people what they're looking at. You know, you wouldn't say, oh, that's a garbage truck, because you wouldn't know. Some people who do similar work like to show the details, like to show a lock or a door or make it clear what you're looking at. That's not my way. Because I think it interferes with the design itself. This one's a little tricky as found art because of course its basis is graffiti, but it's been affected in interesting ways. These red slashes were not original, and it's been aged, it's been weathered. It's probably 2 or 3 years old by now. So I thought that was enough to give it a found art, accidental art look. The next one to the right, number 36. One of the qualities of found art, of certain kind of found art, is depth. And that's because in this case, we seem to have started with a green background, but then various people have applied their paints. Blue, white, red, some black at the bottom, maybe some little thin black lines, it's hard to tell, but a bunch of people I think have participated in this. And that gives it this sense of depth. And I call this Octopus's Garden because it looked to me like it was kind of under the sea. You know, you were looking at water and things in it. But I love that sense of depth there. We could go into the next room. And let's see, up at the top, top left. This is called Girl Upside Down. You can see the girl is upside down. Now, one might normally think, well, he just took a picture of a girl who was right side up and flipped it over. But I didn't. This was the actual image. And you can tell that because there's a little R in the upper left-hand corner that tells us that that's the orientation. Why this girl is upside down, I had no idea at all. But there it is. I found the picture fascinating. I still do. If we go lower to the lower left. This is called Riot because as you might be able to see, it's got the word riot right in the center. And I found this in Rome on an electrical box on the Tiber River. And I like it because it's so sort of jangly complex. You know, it's got this religious figure, which is a paste up. On the right, it's got some rust. It's got that lovely black X on a pink background. I love pink and black. It's got a couple of pieces of tape, which somehow enrich it, some writing up on top that, you know, and some other characteristics. But I love its energy and its complexity. Let's see. Oh yeah, to the next picture, right? That one right there of Donald Donald Trump. This is a new series that I've developed just this spring, and it's called Hauntings. That's the series, and this is called COVID Haunting, and it features our president behind a nurse with a mask on. The interesting thing about this is that, of course, Trump never was behind this nurse, and it looks as if one might assume that it's a double exposure, a standard photographic technique, which I've frankly never used. But this is not a double exposure; it's a single picture. So you have to figure out how he did that. And the one to the right. This is New York, New York City. And occasionally I'll do something that reminds me of a well-known painter or artist. In this case, this reminds me of James Rosenquist and the kind of pop culture, pop art he was doing in the early 1960s. In fact, I used one of his pictures on an edited collection I did. So I know something about him. But here again, I also love the colors. I like pink and purple or that blue, and yeah. So let's see. We're on our last wall, and I'm only going to do one of these. If we pull away from the wall, the wall to the right. I mean, if you want me to talk about any of these, I will. But I'm going to just talk about the lower left picture. This was taken in Tivoli, far from the center of the city, and I called it aqueducts because it seemed to me that these black things look like aqueducts, and I always thought it was without intent, but it's possible that the drip seems so obvious and so numerous that it's possible that this person was engaged in some intentional thing that maybe he or she thought looked like aqueducts. Here again, I love yellow, of the kind of purple, the black, And I will say finally, that I find a lot of my work beautiful, and it's occurred to me often that I wonder sometimes, well, is that enough that something be beautiful? And beyond that, is it even good? Anyway, I'll stop there and take questions and comments and whatever comes. Thank you so much for your patience.
Bill, thank you so much. I have one question before we open to the chat to allow people time to type in theirs, but and this is probably not a very smart question, but I'm curious, have you ever thought of, or did you ever, when you started thinking about ephemeral art or street art and so on, have you ever done any yourself?
No, you mean like painting
directly,
graffiti or something?
Well, or directly in the environment, or not from something, but your own piece left in a space, in some in an urban space.
No, I've never done that. I think I have zero. I've never been much of a drawer, to say the least. I think I have limited artistic ability in that regard. Never occurred to me to do anything. Actually, Diane has done a little spray painting, but I don't think she wants to talk about that. It was
okay. Well, keep that a best kept secret. So I think, Barbara, did you want to monitor now the chat?
Yeah, there is a question from, thank you, Sharon and William. There's a question from Frank about the size of the pictures in the exhibition. Maybe William, you would like to comment on that, if it's in proportion, yes, no, and what you did for the exhibition.
On the size. Actually, no, they're not in proportion. For example, the picture, I think you can see this wall, right, that I'm looking at. The upper right picture is probably in reality only about 12 inches high, all right? On the other hand, on the other end of the same wall, you can see this kind of jagged red thing. You know, the original for that is probably 6 feet high by 4 feet. So, you know, anyway, beyond that, I can also add so that I've increasingly come to like the square look as opposed to the 3x2 look. And some of these on the wall are square, as you can see. Diva up above, and the garbage truck is square, and so forth. But no, yeah, some of these are large, and I think that's a problem. But I don't know why exactly. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think so. Thank you, William. There's another question from Karima about, I think, one of the works of art in the first room with the location, asking about the location of the cement art path. I think you...
Oh, yes. Yes, I didn't say, did I? It's Lewiston. It's Art Park. We had done Lewiston, New York. We had done a long hike in the Niagara Gorge, and we're coming back, and I came across this this pad. I think we're talking about the same place, right? And was immediately astonished. And so I took a bunch of quick photographs. I have to be quick because Diane's always walking ahead and impatiently. Not always, but sometimes. So that's where it was. That's where it's located. I hate to identify it even because it's such a great place to. I feel like I'm giving away one of my secrets by explaining where it is.
Thank you.
Well, with a question from Bennett, was asking about the fact if you ever add something to the found art. So to say, if you would edit or cut things in the composition. Yeah, he's asking about this. And what is it about Rome and LA that seems to so amenable to your work? So also a question about the locations you chose.
Now the first question was I'm sorry.
If you add or edit some of the work you find.
Yes, I didn't used to. I used to pride myself on just you know, printing. I do print my own stuff, but I'm just doing it just like it was. But more recently I've taken to cropping, especially when I post on Instagram. On Instagram, you know, I don't know, you can, the problem with cropping, of course, is that you lose pixels. You lose, you lose a lot of pixels whenever you crop something. Doesn't matter on Instagram. It would matter if I were printing a picture for someone. So I'm aware of some of these, the limitations of cropping. I also...
Ever touch one of the things that you photograph, like the real work of art that you know that you have in front of you that you're photographing? Are you ever touching something, for example, on the wall that you're photographing, or the doors that you're photographing? Are you adding anything or there?
No. I add nothing. Some people actually, in terms of poster art. I don't know if some of you may know of Mimo, I think it's Rotella, who was working maybe 50 years ago with posters, but he did it intentionally. He would put a bunch of posters up, and then he would start tearing things off and producing finally some kind of poster work quite intentionally. But I don't do that. I'm very reluctant to touch anything, you know, a poster, and say, oh, it'd look a little bit better if this were torn a little bit more. I don't do that. I do add a little intensity when I print the pictures, or I usually increase the contrast some. That seems to be the essential to produce something that's really vibrant. But I don't use Photoshop, and my interventions in terms of, I never change color. Actually, I did it once recently. Never change the color. you know, because, you know, with these programs, you can make it red or you can make it blue. I like one of the reasons I'm attracted to the pictures to begin with is because I like the colors as they originally were. I like to intensify the colors a bit, but not change them.
I think that answers the question of Bennett, and to follow up with the question of Don Carroll, who was asking about the locations.
Oh, yes.
Why Rome, why Los Angeles?
You know, Los Angeles, I can't explain. Los Angeles is no longer, as I mentioned, no longer the best place to do this kind of work because the authorities are so vigilant about painting things over. Used to be quite good. Used to be, you know, quite a bit of graffiti and tagging and complex layering of things as a result. It's still not too bad in terms of people putting up little posters and then other posters, and it has some good electrical boxes, which are kind of the last bastion of found art. I think in some cities, the authorities seem to leave those alone more than other than some of the walls on businesses, for example. Rome, of course, is one of the, I don't know, is a city where the government has yet to do anything, as far as I could tell, to clean up the city. It doesn't have any crews going around and painting over things. And as a result, complex layerings are allowed to develop and present themselves. So in that sense, it's a great space for that reason.
It's interesting that you say, because there is actually an organization in Rome that is called Retake Rome, who does retake certain walls now in terms of taking, emphasizing certain graffiti or emphasizing certain posters, but also what they consider just tags. I mean, they are actually, you know, repainting walls here and there. And it's a group of volunteers. And I think they're not the only organization that exists, but I mean, it's absolutely the biggest one at the moment in Rome, active and dealing with these issues.
That's interesting, and I can fully understand that impulse. I mean, the tagging is outrageous and often ugly, and overdone and kind of stupid. Of course, my own interest, you know, that there's just a lot of junk out there, but sometimes, you know, junk on top of junk on top of junk produces art for me. So I'm ambivalent, but I can fully understand why the worst of it would be should be painted over and eliminated.
For that comment. I think the next question is also interesting to, you know, maybe for our audience to hear your answer to this. It's a question from Chiara Midolo, who is asking if you remember the specific moment when you came to realize that what you were doing or are doing, and if that actually that moment made you realize that you had to make your art with more intention. Like, can you maybe develop a little bit when you had this connection with, yes, this is what I'm doing?
Yes, there was, I don't remember an exact moment, but there was a time, I think it was probably 2011, and we'd been in Rome for a number of years, for months, a couple of months each time, for quite a while. And then I think in 2011, I thought, you know, this is something. You know, maybe I should do something with it. And one of the things that helped was a good friend of mine was selling a color printer, and he was moving up to a larger model, and I bought his printer, and which is, you know, one of these things that uses, prints really beautifully. It uses 8 cartridges, and you get great color, and can print up to 17 inches wide and so forth. And that just kind of blew me away, printing this stuff. It's like a miracle, you know, you say print and then it starts printing, and then you're there you are with this gorgeous piece of work in 5 minutes. And that helped. So there were a couple of things that moved me to take this more seriously.
I think we still have time for a couple questions. No, William, you're happy to answer some more? Yeah. So we have a question from William Warner. Aesthetics often emphasizes the difference between the represented and the representation. This is traditionally marked by the frame. Don't your unframed art break down the difference between representation and the represented?
That's a hard question.
It sounds like Bill Warner, you know. You know, I sometimes tell a story of Bill and I, you know, in the 1980s. I assume this is the Bill Warner that, right? That we're talking about.
Yes,
But
yes.
our wives were really hard workers, and you know, one a lawyer, one a doctor, and we would sit in the hot tub and talk about obscure stuff. And sometimes I would wonder if I would just wait for Bill to say something that I understood. And I'm not sure I understand this comment. So I'll have to defer on that one. Sorry, Bill.
I would have also, it's a hard question.
Or if somebody could reinterpret it for me, I'd be glad to try to answer it.
We have another also very interesting and beautiful question as well from Don Carroll. You call this found art, but you're making selections from within the work you find. What is it you're seeking when you select or edit the essence of the piece, beauty, or what is it that you're capturing?
I actually don't know. I'd say beauty, color, materiality, but it happens so fast. You have to realize I think this is relevant to the question of intent, my own intent. I don't sit around and take a half an hour and set up a tripod and think real hard. I photograph these things in 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I see a wall. Oh, that looks good. Bam, bam. Okay, then I'm off. You know, so there's something intuitive, really highly intuitive about it. It's something like this that's on the screen now. I just think that's just really beautiful. How did that ever happen? That's a kind of miracle almost. It's on a trestle, and railroad trestle in Buffalo. And I'm sort of stunned by things. That's not often the case. And I take a lot of pictures that in the end, I think, you know, that's not really very interesting. That's not very good. Probably 1 out of 10 or something is, I find really satisfying. So I don't have a good answer to that. I like things that have a lot of energy. That are
also one of our professors at Temple Rome, Catherine Krisick, is saying or writing, perhaps it becomes art when you select it. I think that's also a very nice follow-up consideration, you know, talking about this topic. Then we have Bennett, and I'm reading with you. Have you ever had any interesting conversations or confrontations with someone who sees you taking photographs and wants to know what you're doing?
yeah. In fact, yesterday we were walking on the shore of Lake Erie, and we came across some construction workers in orange who were putting, you know, working on concrete barriers to keep the water out. And they smiled. I took a picture of them, and then I moved down, and there was a big iron thing. I don't even know what it was, some kind of a enormous iron contraption. And I started photographing the side of it because I liked the colors. And one of the guys came over and said, well, you know, what are you up to? You know, there's a kind of suspicion there that, oh, maybe I was photographing this old iron thing and was going to write something critical about what was happening. I don't know what he had in mind, but he didn't mind. They didn't mind me photographing them, but they were concerned when I photographed this piece of metal. And I said, well, this is what I do. I'm a photographer. I photograph found art, accidental art, and I like these colors. And he said, oh, okay. So, and I think there have been other incidents, they don't come to mind right now, but but and it doesn't.
Thank you for sharing. That's interesting. William, I have a personal question as well. Do you walk around with your camera like 24 or like how do you go, how do you walk around with your camera all the time? Do you pick days? Does it depend on how you feel that day? Like, when are you the photographer taking your camera to take shots?
Well, my camera is always with me in case I forget it. That seldom happens. It's always there. I have taken, I estimate, 40,000 pictures of Rome.
Wow.
Not all of them, of course, are found art pictures, but you know, we have a Rome blog, and so whenever we go out walking, I mean, I come back with 50, 60 pictures of various things, and so I feel like I almost don't want to go anywhere without it. It's terrible in a way. It's kind of addiction, but that's the fact.
There's one comment that's a great compliment. I have to read this one. It's from a dear friend, Frank Palaya, and he says, "Bill, you have an excellent painter's eye," which I think it's a lovely comment, which comes on the tail of many people saying, beautiful show. We've, lots of comments.
Oh,
Una bellissima mostra.
Well, it's very kind. I appreciate the compliments. It's really nice.
Also, some greetings to your to Diane from some of the people in the audience as well, and and also a follow-up question on from Bennett about the police or authorities stopping you to do what you were doing. Did that ever happen?
From photographing? I've been stopped. No, I'm sorry. Will they stop me from taking photographs?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've been stopped. I've been stopped twice in Rome, but not when I was doing anything with found art. In one case, I was taking a picture of I think the Fiat building, and there's a bas relief from a distance, and some people, some sort of bodyguard types, walked up and said, "What are you doing?" And I explained it, and they said, "Well, you can't do that because, I don't know, I guess there were some important people or vehicles like a block away." And the other time I took a picture in one of the post offices, and I was hauled up to the third floor of the post office and interrogated. They finally allowed me to leave and didn't take my, I think it was film I was shooting at the time. They didn't take my film because I told them, "Well, look, I'm just a tourist. I'm just interested in the building." And some of these post offices, as you know, are quite interesting architecturally, but I have had those two experiences in Rome. Neither one recently.
There's a comment from Jacob Carroll, Don and Dana's son, who says that he says, "Great work, Bill. We love following your new work."
Oh,
So
very kind.
That's nice coming from Jacob.
Thank you, Jacob.
So if there aren't any more questions, Bill, do you have any other last comments you might want to say to wrap up? And then I'll make my concluding comments.
I'm just so pleased that all of you tuned in. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
It was a great audience, and you were wonderful. Thank you so much. I want everybody to remember that. Wait, there's another comment. Oh, okay. So one last comment. Do you want to?
I will read it with you. You mentioned that these pieces are not intentional, but your intention is what makes them art, right? Where is the wine and the cheese?
This is, of course, a major issue. And I thought a lot about my own intent, and I don't dispute that something is there. But as I said, I try to be intuitive, a bit like Jackson Pollock. Like working fast and not thinking too hard about it, but it's hard to. And I don't like the idea of saying, "Well, I'm the artist here." That seems so arrogant, because I'm really photographing things that other people have assembled, and so it seems wrong to take credit as an artist, at least full credit. So it's a complex issue for me that I've been dealing with frankly, for years, thinking about that.
Very nice, very wonderful. People are asking about accessing the show after this evening, and I remind everyone that it will be in a few days on the Temple University Rome YouTube channel. You can also go back to the original invitation, which you followed to come on Zoom, and that will take you to the Temple University website, and so it'll all be, it's all easily accessible. And on the Zoom recording, you'll also be able to have the chat, so you can read the chats and hear people's answers or comments and so on. So, oh yeah, here it is, Emily. Thank you so much. Emily's showing you how to do it. Right. So the show the show goes on.
Well, this has been great. I want to thank Emily for doing a great
Yes.
job of navigating the gallery. I know this program a bit, and I know it's not that simple to move around. And you did really fine work. And thank you again, Barbara and Shara.
Very welcome.
Did somebody say, I think people are waving to you, Bill. I don't know if you can see them, because
Okay.
I don't know if you can see but Nancy Siegel says thank you, and Brian Grattan says thank you, and
No, Brian, Nancy, yeah, okay, that's great.
The show was gorgeous.
Everybody's names.
So much.
Yeah, and here's Emily
Mary
commenting.
McKenna, of course, Linda Marsh, and some
It
others.
was a great audience. Thank you to everyone for joining in, and we hope you'll come back to our next shows.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
William, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, for me.